I'm Charlie, and I want to start by asking a super important question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how much control do you think that you have in your life right now? I don't know about you, but when I was in middle school, control was something I never felt like I had enough of. We all want to be the boss of our own life, right? Well, before we get too deep into this, let's think about some things in life that we can't control, like, or maybe no. But really though, I do think there's some things we can control even in middle school. Things like our attitude. In our lives, we can focus on the negative or the positive. We can think about all the things that are going wrong or all the things that we're thankful for. We can also control our work ethic. We can work hard and show up prepared. We can study and practice and plan all the things that we know are coming. And how about the way we treat people? We have control how kindly we speak to people, how we react to others, how we care for people. We cannot control others, but we can control how we interact with them. On the flip side, what are some things you cannot control? Like your friends' moods, some decisions your parents or guardians make, school rules, leaders in the play, first or second chair in the band. If the coach starts us in the big game, what other people are saying about us? What about the small stuff you can't control? Like what's for dinner, what time you're leaving for church? You can't even control what gets put on your own calendar. When you think about it, there are a lot of things in life that we can't control. The weather, the laws in our town, our height. The list could go on for days and days, but today we're gonna focus on one, the future. I know that sounds really complicated. As a middle schooler, thinking about the future, it's just so far away. I know that you're probably focused on what's happening like right now. Even if you are thinking about the future, you may not be thinking that far ahead. Maybe when you do think about it, it's frustrating. Sure, you have plans and goals and hopes and dreams, but at the end of the day, you know those things may change as you get older. You can study hard today for that test tomorrow, but you can't control which questions are on the test. You can work hard to develop a really great reputation in the future, but you can't control if someone doesn't like you or tells lies about you. You can put in all the work to prepare for that audition, but you can't control how your theater teacher decides to cast a school play. When it comes to the future, you can't control how a lot of things are gonna play out. And that might be kind of difficult because we want certainty, and that means to be completely sure that something is true or will happen. We might want that because in some ways we want to feel like we're in control. But as we said, we can only know so much. We can only have so much control. We can't always know what's coming or what's going to happen next. And that reality in middle school will be the reality for the rest of our lives. So if we can't control the future, what can we do? Well, the good news is that there is something that you and I can do, and it can be a game changer when it comes to how we approach the unknown future. Let's take a look at the Bible to find out how to navigate what's uncertain in our lives. The Bible is divided into two sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is the books of the Bible that record what happened before Jesus was born. The New Testament is the books that record the time that Jesus walked on earth and beyond. But ultimately, whether it's the Old Testament or the New Testament book, they all point to Jesus. In the Old Testament, there's a book of poetry called Psalms. In it, King David made a statement that's helpful for us as we navigate our way into an uncertain future. Let's read it. Oh, the joys of those who trust the Lord, who have no confidence in the proud or in those who worship idols. In this passage, we read from the book of Psalms. David was basically saying, sure, you can obsess over certainty, you can chase after it, but if you want more peace and joy and happiness right now, put your trust in the one who ultimately is in control. Trust is the foundation of faith, and part of faith is choosing to trust God, especially when we don't know what the future is going to look like. And while we may feel that the future is unclear, to God, it's all under control. Instead of trying to control it ourselves, we can trust the one who's great enough to handle whatever comes our way. The author of Hebrews explains faith like this. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and an assurance about what we do not see. Okay, so you may be thinking, hold up, that sounds like certainty. After all, certainty is being sure of something. So how is being sure of what we hope for different than certainty? Well, the author goes on to share several stories that can help us understand what that means. Let's talk about this one. In the same chapter of Hebrews, there's a section called the Hall of Faith. It mentions people by name talks about their faith and says that they were admired and celebrated for how they believe. Here's an example. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Abraham put his faith in God. Even when God didn't lay it out for him step by step of what was to come, Abraham followed God into an unknown future. I'm sure it would have been difficult for Abraham to have zero certainty, just like it would be for you and me, but he trusted God. And that trust is what guided him forward, even though he didn't know what was coming. And trusting God can do the same for us. When we face the unclear and the unknown and the uncertain parts of life, you can approach them with a faith because God's got it covered. You can trust God when everything else is uncertain. You can either focus on trying to find control and certainty, or you can look to the one who's ultimately in control. You can trust God when everything else is uncertain. Now, this doesn't mean that everything will work out the way you think it will, but it does mean that no matter what comes your way in the present or the future, you can face it with faith because you trust God who has it all under control. As you think about what feels uncertain or unclear for your future, big or small, here are a couple questions I want you to consider today. First, what's making you feel uncertain? What part of your future feels unclear? What stresses you out when you think about what's happening? What about your future do you wish you had certainty right now? And the second thing, what would it look like for you to trust God? Instead of worrying about it and avoiding it or trying to control it, what would it really look like for you to choose to trust God? Maybe it's praying about it. Maybe it's talking to an adult or your small group leader for guidance. Or simply saying, God, I trust you with this every time it comes to your mind. Whatever it is, consider what it might look like to trust God with the parts of your future that feel the most uncertain right now. Remember, you can trust God when everything else is uncertain. You can't know every outcome, and you can't control what's coming your way. You can't even be sure everything will always work out the way you want. Faith or not, that's just part of being a human. But you can walk toward anything with a faith that God will be with you when you go, guide you, and go before you into everything that the future holds. As we close today and when you head to your group, I want you to think about this question. What's one thing I hope for my future right now?